You're live.
Live. So welcome to Jin Shin Institute, and I'm very honored and happy to have Matthias Roth here. We go back about almost 30 years when I first started, and we both come from a similar background. We were both dancers, and Matthias is here for something that he's going to tell you about. I'm just very happy that you're sharing the practice circle with me, and you'll be sharing your knowledge and everything. So this is Matthias, everybody.
Thank you, Alexis, for having me. And I'm really, really touched and honored to be here. The reason I'm coming to New York is that this weekend there is a dance concert at the 92nd Street Y that I absolutely want to see. It's a program that's been choreographed by Eileen Paslow. And Eileen, when I came to New York at age 20, so that was like 5 years ago. Oh no, it was longer than that. So when I came to New York many years ago, 36 years ago, to study dance, I chanced upon this dancer and choreographer and dance teacher. She was then a professor at Bard College, who introduced something into the warm-up phases of our rehearsals that she then told us was called Jyutsu, which she had learned from one Mary Burmeister. So Eileen became my most important teacher back then. She was the person who introduced me to Jin Shin Jyutsu. She's the person who first worked on me when I actually had a physical something, had a sore throat because I moved to New York in the summer and I was not used to air conditioning. So I got sore throats, nothing bad, but Eileen said, let me work on you for 5 minutes. Well, she didn't do 5, she did 10, standing up in the theater. And she just did something, I could tell you now a version of what flow it was, but I didn't know that back then. And it felt to me like her fingers, which were most respectfully placed on my body and over my clothing when she got down from the face to here, were at the same time miles in my body energetically, without being intrusive or invasive in the least. And that her whole being with me in that was all about listening. And I have linked on my Facebook page and my Facebook profile to an article about her dance concerts that are coming up that appeared in the New York Times just the day before yesterday. And there you see Eileen just recently in rehearsal, and you can get a sense from the photographs, which are very beautiful in the New York Times, about how her being is about listening. And how could there be a deeper and more profound lesson about what it means to truly practice Jin Shin Jyutsu as the art of primal aliveness through sentient human being than by that? And some of the things you read about the experimental times in the Jyutsu Memorial Church dance scene that she was a part of in the 60s, that basic notion that life is about listening and about looking at what's often not seen and listening to what's often not heard and see the beauty in things that other people or our own minds discard. I think that's a deep lesson that'll never grow old.
Mm-hmm. And you have a special class, I think it's called Feeling?
To feel.
You have a special, and also we talk a lot about it with the group, right? About listening and feeling. So it's very much what we practice and very much a part of Jin Shin Jyutsu. And actually I may come to Eileen's performance, and that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
So
the next time I had a sore throat, just to continue with my Jin Shin Jyutsu history briefly, she said, okay, this time you're going to Philomena. Now, Philomena Dooley, who Eileen saw regularly back then, was a practitioner in New York. She has been on this platform. You know Philomena very, very well.
Yes.
We both have known her for a long time. And so then that came into my life, and it was Philomena who strongly suggested, shall we say, that I take my first class with Mary. That was back in '84. So after 2 years of daily self-help, Jin Shin Jyutsu to me felt very, very familiar from the very beginning. It just never felt foreign to me or strange. I was 20 when I met it, and there I was.
Do you think your awareness being a dancer also helped? Because I was a dancer too, and it made sense to me too very quickly.
Yeah. Well, see, the interesting thing is that before I decided to move to New York to study dance, I'd been at university in Berlin to study philosophy and literature and theatrical science. And when that proved too dry, I was not interested in saying smart things or having a brilliant analysis of life. I was interested in how does this actually influence people's lives and the way we embody and the way we I don't know, interact with the fabric of life or something like that. And so I got into dance late by dancers' standards. And in dance, I was also not so interested in how high can I jump or throw my legs around, but in what does this have to do with human embodiment? How do we come alive? And so I think, to answer your question, it's not so much my background in dance that helped as the motivation that against all odds got me into dance. Because, while in Germany it was very different from, well, it was not pronounced in the same way as it was in America, that you were either a jock or academic. It still was that if you were a German boy, my generation, you played soccer, meaning that if you were not very good at it, you stood on a soccer field and you were being yelled at. And somehow that was not my ideal of living a fulfilled life. I don't know why. But so I was lousy at sports, and that's why I'm saying against all odds. I loved to think, I loved to learn, but I loved the sensuous quality of thinking. I loved the sensuous quality of language and the sensuous quality of touch. So to me, that's also why meeting Mary was so, first meeting Eileen with her, she is just all listening with all her senses, with her whole body, with everything. And then Mary, the two share a birthday, by the way, not the same year, but the same day. Mary, so very different, so reserved, or so she seemed, and yet such a listener with her being, and a much firmer touch than Eileen had, or has, but the same awareness, the same, I don't mean to correct something or someone here, I mean to create space for change to happen. So
that is really like in dance and in Jin Shin Jyutsu, to let the art shine through.
That's right.
To get a certain understanding about feeling and allowing it to happen, and that when the art part of it becomes so alive.
And
right?
Yes, exactly. And in the listening, and we'll see this when we get to the practice part, today I guess I would say life is a feast of listening for what's there right now, and if you apply that to a Jin Shin Jyutsu session and looking at a body, it's a feast of finding a way to amorously look at the body you have in front of you. I'll talk more about that when we actually get to the practice, but this part is important because when I say to lovingly look, I said amorously look, deliberately, because lovingly, often when we use that word, has a condescending quality to it. Oh, I see where you're stuck, and the way your feet are falling out, that's a 9, and the way that that's a 15, and there's some 14 there that's showing, but we'll focus on harmony, but we're already not focusing on harmony. To amorously look at a person is, where is the strength that I see now? And not, okay, so with all the weaknesses that of course I see because I'm really advanced, where do I nonetheless see some inkling of a strength? No. Where is this person's stronghold? Where is the place within that they can go to, where the being seems to say, this is where I'll always be safe. This is the thing that I have learned through this existence, never to give up, never to shrink from. And then find that place of strength that is already secured, that is already owned and inhabited, and from that, rather than pointing at all the many things that in any of us and all of us need to change. Oh, this needs to change, that needs to change. Oh, I have 36 and a half years of Jin Shin Jyutsu, so let me tell you what needs to change in you, and you, oh my God, I didn't mean to say that. We love you. Oh dear, I think we could get, that's manipulation, just under sweeter names. But to truly see, wow, what an amazing being you have brought to me in this moment. Let's truly acknowledge the strength that we mean, that we amorously see, and with that amorous gaze and a touch that reflects it, see how that can expand into other areas of the body where it's not yet as much at home, and other areas of that person's life. Because the two go together.
Yeah.
The body, when it is not an object we look at as a thing to be corrected, is truly the habits in their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautifully explained, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I just visited Wayne in Hawaii, and he was talking about looking for the harmonizer, looking for the harmony. And Philomena always talked about that as well. It's looking for the harmony in the body, and also what we're harmonizing, right? I have here a special Tyler. Oh. Son is going back to college now. I'm just a demonstration of a Jin Shin baby. This was Tyler. And this is Tyler now going back to college. He's had Jin Shin all his life. And you met Matthias, right?
Yeah, that's the
Now
office.
taking Jin Shin Jitsu back to college. Bye me first. I'll talk to you later.
Bye, Tyler.
Bye. Sorry, you
Safe
were
travels.
leaving at this time, so. Alright. Yeah, that's beautiful, and
And I'll just quickly thank you for mentioning earlier on in our conversation the To Feel class. This is a class I decided 20 years ago, I think, to come up with, because having been sort of raised on this background of listening respectfully, as I was teaching 5-day classes, and many of them, in the late 90s I was teaching 22 5-day classes a year, and then about a dozen or 13 weekend classes on top of that. So I was teaching a lot and seeing a lot of people in a lot of countries and a lot of places, and one thing seemed pretty constant to me. The people were looking to me, to us, as the instructors for how should I do this, where do I put my hand, where is the 9, now is the 9 here, I think Wayne said it was more there, Philomena said it's more here. Who's right? Only your hands will tell you. And if your hands just do the right thing, then the person on the table doesn't feel like they're meant. And so both for the person on the table to feel it's actually about them, and for you to feel you're doing your work and not copying someone else's, you need a level of contact that many people, I felt, were doing without and were forfeiting, because I guess maybe it's because our education works that way, imitate until you're good enough to do your own thing. That is such a stupid idea. But like stupid ideas go, it gets repeated generation after generation and after generation, and once something's been done 3 times, you say this is the way it's always done. Once something's certainly been done for 3 generations, we just think that's the way it needs to be. And so the To Feel class, where we spread the usual, okay, I'll plunk myself next to the table, I'll listen to your pulses, and I'll start. We spread that out over 2 days. So how do I first need to land here, land in myself, be present? If you want, we can, or if it's okay with you, we can maybe lead a very, very short one for our viewers as well as for the listeners here. Just sit there wherever you are right now and feel your feet on the floor. Really feel the feet on the floor. Don't just let your mind notice that they're on the floor, but feel them. Feel your feet on the floor, and as you exhale, feel how the feet are releasing their weight more onto the floor. How they're getting fatter on the ground. You see, when I studied dance, every dance teacher talks about contact to the floor. Eileen was the one who would say things like, have fat feet on the ground. Fat is not the word that we use around classical dance. Ever. Have fat feet on the ground. Juicy feet. Let your feet generously embrace the ground, and with each exhalation, more so. Place your hands on your thighs or knees, wherever, just wherever they're comfortably placed, palms down. Don't go into what you might consider a meditation position. It's just everyday, ordinary person sitting there, but an ordinary person in the ordinary sense of a person who's actually there, actually here in the body. So the hands are there, but you're there too. The feet are on the floor, and you're there too. Your butt is on the chair, and you're actually there. You don't leave your butt, your hands and your feet to it and take off in your mind. And then with each exhalation, allow your shoulders to melt and if you're already accustomed to much Jin Shin Jyutsu, then you've probably completed the sentence in your mind. Let your shoulders melt down or drop your shoulders. Forget that, will you? For a moment. And just let your shoulders melt and explore where do they go when you let them melt. Allow your shoulders to melt into their natural expansion. If from there your shoulders need to go down, they will. But let them be wide. And while you do that, observe. Where in your body that produces results, and where in your being that echoes. And so do you still have the sensuous quality of your shoulders having returned to the width, the expansion that's kind of their home, and the sensuous awareness at the same time of soft, sweet hands resting earthily on your thighs. And a soft base on the chair. And soft, sweet, ordinary, earthy feet. You can continue this exercise with the exhalation very consciously, allowing the weight to land more and more. And you can pursue it to explore that natural weightedness, as I like to call it. Natural weightedness is the opposite of heaviness. Heaviness is weight that has not been released. And when you get to a deliciously weighted state, then you're here. And then it makes sense, more sense, that you would, raise your hands and offer them to another. So that's just the first step of how to get present. And we don't ritualize that. I don't recommend to spend, once you have some practice with that you spend minutes or tens of minutes doing that, but to have some sense of the realness and the connectedness of your presence, that you're not going to be a gift from that mental place that can analyze that the way the person's feet are lying, it's surely indicating a 9 flow. But from that juicy place of I'm here present to myself, I'm here present to them, and let's start. Let the work begin, let the conversation begin.
This would also allow us to connect to the source energy, this process,
Yes.
which is where the light comes in, right?
Yes.
7th depth.
Yeah.
So by practicing this, because people sometimes ask how do I get into it? How do I protect myself even? It's by doing something like this, which we can do quicker also, right? When you practice more, it can happen instantly.
Yeah.
But it's that place, and also to access it through the breathing is, thank you for this. Beautiful.
Sure. And that's just the beginning. So the arc of that whole class is from land on the floor, land in me, land in my body, land in the sensitivity of my hands, start applying my hands, being present to myself, and then the first day basically is spent on landing with me, and the second day is spent on landing in a contact with the other that leaves space for the process to have its own life.
So now we would like you to come and do this class one day.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's a lovely project. I'm very, very happy to be here on this private trip and be your special guest, Alexis.
Yes.
Thank you that this can happen. And
Also,
before I come here to do real teaching,
Yes,
we'll
I
figure
know.
out real visa things, etc.,
Absolutely.
etc. But for
Which we
2020,
are
2019
working on,
is
yes.
full. But for 2020, I think it's a real
So one day
project.
soon we'll have Matthias teach the feeling class. On Sunday we will be presenting together.
Yes.
We will be presenting, I'm teaching a self-help class, and so Matthias will be here and be my special guest. So I'm honored. So still, if you want to register, I think Danielle, right? There's still a few more
Yes,
spots
yes.
available. So that's from 11 till 1. And I wanted, what else did I want to, I just wanted, just a funny thing, that Pat Paslov, Eileen's
Mhm.
sister, she was my first client.
Wow.
She used to go to
Yes.
Philomena, and
Yeah.
Philomena said, oh, you can see Pat Paslov and Milton in Manhattan.
Mhm.
And so this was in the early 90s. So there we go, how it all ties together.
Yes, and yeah. Did you ever meet Remy Charlotte?
No.
He was a close friend. He was a dancer. Remy was, but I think he was living in California by the time he got into Jyutsu.
Yeah.
A piece of his that Eileen staged is being danced tonight and on Sunday at the Y. But Remy was also a student of Mary's. He was also very much into Jyutsu. And between Remy and Pat and Eileen, and Milton, Pat's husband, it's not like I knew Pat well, but one of the conversations I recall when I was, very young and talking about painting to this painter, and I recently discovered Mark Rothko and said something about how I liked Rothko, and Pat said, yes, well, we think painting is to be looked at, not to be worshipped. And I could hear the charge there. I knew there was a Rothko chapel in Dallas somewhere, etc.
Yeah.
And the whole movement that, Pat and Eileen in very different ways, but Judson, the whole Judson scene, James Waring, etc. This whole thing of, hey, let's be real, let's be simple, let's not glorify anything. Eileen has been such an interesting teacher to me in so many ways because, I came from Europe, where to speak about great art and great this and grand that is normal, as it was in the US too at that age, and it was very important in the 60s. Those movements that said, let's just stay real and be simple and look at what's here. So Pat was
They were good artists, yes.
yeah.
Matthias, what do you feel about the moving forward Jin Shin Jyutsu in the world today? And your thoughts about that, because still today a lot of people don't know what it is. And if somebody would ask you also, what is Jin Shin Jyutsu? How do you explain it quickly so that you can keep a young person's attention?
I don't.
Okay.
It's true, because I have found that the attention of the person of any age is kept if there's resonance.
20, right?
There are people who just see the calligraphy, Mary's calligraphy, and say, I don't know what this is, but I can learn this. People hear the name and say, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it feels right. People like me, at age 20, I just do it, and it feels like my being has always known that. I totally respect the desire of people who want to see Jin Shin Jyutsu in every hospital in the world, in every daycare center, and all of that. I think that's a wonderful and worthy cause, and I'm not the right person for it. I'm interested in the poetic dimension of life, and let me explain what I mean by that. I don't mean let's do pretty talk about Jin Shin Jyutsu. To me, when I said amorous before, I look at a body and I am enamored with what I see. I am in love with the process. I don't fall in love with the person, but with the process, with the beauty that is always profoundly and innately there in a human being. Not everybody is at the point of finding it accessible or less than threatening or even totally frightening to open up to that dimension. I believe that ultimately we are made of that dimension, and in Jin Shin Jyutsu we talk about 13 spirit, our sensitivity, the heart area being the root, and mind being the trunk, and 15 body being the fruits, the application, the technique. And if people want to have a short enough technical, what does this do? How will I change if I commit to your program? If people want that kind of a rundown, they need to get it from someone else. Mm-hmm. Not because I don't believe in the efficiency. Mm-hmm. I have found that, and this is why it's so great that there are so many of us taking so many different approaches, mm-hmm. you know, because I have had to hold this space for the last 36 years of being the one who will speak whether people think they like it or not, to that part of the person that I just know is the root in everyone, even in those who don't identify with it. We want to be touched by life. We don't want to first get life under control and then figure out whether we're also feeling something about life. We come from that feeling place. Now, many of us have been scared out of realizing that we come from that feeling place, but you know, it's just been my experience for all these decades that the people I'm meant to connect with me immediately from that feeling place. Mm-hmm. Even if they say, you know, when I was 25, a doctor in Paris saw the effect of my work on 3 of her patients who had become my clients. And she asked to meet me because the things that were happening, unbeknownst to me, were medically implausible. So, you know, the work was it seems, efficient in an improbable way, but that was not where I was with it. I never, to this day, have said to anyone, Jujutsu can do this and this and this and get rid of that and that and that and ease this and this and this. People talk that way, and that's okay. You know, in Germany we have this profession of Heilpraktiker. It's similar, well, maybe the closest thing to it in America is a naturopath, more or less. And so if you're a naturopath, you know, a person who does alternative medicine, it's perfectly okay to say, I establish a diagnostic, I devise a treatment plan. And Mary was very clear. She said, literally, word by word, in Jin Shin Jyutsu there's no diagnosing, no healing, no curing. And I'm not saying, that is bereit weh und this is how you should practice Jin Shin Jyutsu. I'm just saying that of the many passions you can have with this art, mine has been truly that. I don't want to, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that makes sense. I'm reaching out to a lot of younger people and college age students we have on here, so I'll probably give you the hand and the holding the fingers to take home, which is a very easy way to harmonize the body. Mm-hmm. And so we do have simple tools.
Yeah.
And you know, so that people have a beginning and they can start somewhere. Because even somebody like you who has just practiced the main center source by yourself, you know, it's very simple in a way.
Yes.
So we're distilling it just to reach out also to this generation who's very busy and you know.
And you see that's just a case in point. So you reach out to a young generation that's very busy, and depending on who you are, you can talk to them from that place. And you see they're a doer, and into their doingness you insert another bit for them to do. Not my job. I'm so glad other people are doing that job. And then there are these young people, my daughters are 28 and 32, so they're not that little now, but they've known Jin Shin Jyutsu all their life, of course, and they and their generation, I just know that there is in a big part of that young and younger generation a longing and a deep understanding that I come from a place of passion for life. You mean this is a method that revolves around the passion for life in a body? You mean this is about me getting in touch with me? If that 2-sentence lead catches somebody, be they 20 or 85, then that's a person who was sent to me to talk to, and someone else is,
Yeah. All right, that's a beautiful sentence. Can you say it one more time? Brings me to me. I mean, isn't it wonderful? That is a wonderful way to express it and very simple. So thank you. I just wanted to ask you a little bit. You have developed a system and some materials, and can you talk a little bit about that, and also where people can find it?
Well, where do I start? Oh, the To Feel course, because even after 36 years of Jin Shin Jyutsu, my days still only have 24 hours and my years still only have 52 years. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I decided to turn To Feel into an online course. An online course which is, well, it's not the same as having a live experience and the exchange with people in a room. I wanted those tools to be in an archive somewhere. One of the reasons being that I could, that once these things were recorded somewhere, I'm free to move on to other work. For whatever reasons, that after 28 years, I guess, of working very, very closely with Jin Shin Jyutsu Incorporated, it turned out to be just right for us to part ways in some way. I think everybody was being the best they knew how to be, and I wondered, how do I continue? And while I was with JSJ Inc., I already developed and taught to feeling into the safety energy locks, Jin Shin Jyutsu and movement, and so much more that's going in that direction. 13, 14, 15, just 2 or even 3 days around just that, those fun 3 safety energy locks, 3 levels. So once I was no longer presenting for JSJ Inc., the question, of course, that went through my mind is, do I just teach these special classes that I've been teaching in self-help as I've been teaching for over 30 years, or do I, if somebody comes to me and says, how do I learn to practice this on others, and I want to learn it your way, how do I do this? I said, do I say, oh, well, I can't teach you that, you need to go somewhere else, or do I say, okay, here's what I would offer? And that's when I made a decision to take Mariah's gift to humankind. He left, as we've read in Mary's writings, the flows that we find in Mary's textbooks 1 and 2 and some in the self-help books. He left those as a gift to humanity. And of course, Mary's own writing in her textbooks is which I love, I adore, is copyrighted, etc. And so I decided I was going to put the flow, but first of all, I decided that if I was to offer a basic training, while I have always loved the 5-day class, the fact that in 5 days you get so much more information than any human mind can digest, to me was legitimate as long as, yes, we have some laughter. But to me, I'll tell you why I defended that formula and was never in favor of breaking that up into a, 3-year program or something. It seemed perfectly legitimate and even appropriate to me as long as you had, when I was 22 and heard and saw Mary for the first time, I saw somebody who was always being exactly where she was being and letting the inspiration of the moment take her where it would. And the pace would change and the place she went would change, and it wasn't because it was called part 1 that she wouldn't also freely comment on text 2 and quote this and go to that, and there was never a jump and never an interruption. She just went there. To me, while I was sitting there at age 22 and I was just taking the class, I didn't think I wanted to practice some alternative healing. I just loved the art. I was just doing it for myself, but I'd heard there was this authentic person, and I wanted to meet her, and that she was living this philosophy of Oriental, Japanese inspiration. So I wanted that, I thought. And I took 62 pages on a legal-sized pad of very technical notes, while at the same time, though, I had the sensation that every cell of my body was being worked with, and that was really intense. That sense of, okay, so my mind thinks it's getting information, and information is being given, and it's being presented in a comprehensible way, but at the same time, on the vibratory level, something is happening that is leaving every cell of my body changed. Now, as long as that's present, I think the kind of overwhelm that this brings to the mind is not only acceptable, but it serves a purpose. But but for that, we need to be, one who is teaching needs to be able to bring a vibration to the room that changes the vibration in the cells of the people who are listening. Otherwise, you know, I guess learn PowerPoint and break it up into more days of teaching or something like that.
It's like teaching the art. There's something about it that makes sense. That was my first experience too. Like I didn't understand what she was saying.
Yes.
This was Philomena, but there was something about it that I said, yes, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. And for all of you also, you see how it's a process, and you've all taken the 5-day or connections that Jules and I have taught. And so it is like that. We have all this technique, and then you find the art in it, and you present it with the art. And so that's the beauty of Jin Shin Jyutsu, the technique and the art together.
Yeah. So after all those workshops about feeling into the safety energy locks, which means go to the places in the body where in our system an energy lock lives, and feel what it's like when I'm there, and feel what it's like when I move from there, and then find out how it might make sense that this place has been assigned a certain name. You know, with all that work and the field work, and I decided that if I was going to present the basic material, I wanted not to then add on external courses that took people into who is an organ function energy, who is a safety energy lock, who is the main central, who is a depth. I wanted that to be a part of the basic training, which is why I ended up quickly realizing, okay, so then it'll be 3 times 5 days, but 3 modules. 5 days with the safety energy locks, 5 days with the depths, and 5 days with the organ function energy. And when I wrote the first book about the safety energy locks, you know, I wanted new drawings, and I have a dear friend who's here right now, Madeline Fan, who's been a practitioner for quite a few years and an artist for longer than that. She did the drawings where we made sure that the safety energy locks from the beginning didn't look like points, but like brush strokes, and that it was a little dissymmetrical from the left to the right, that people would, from the beginning, you would get the visual information of don't be looking for points or anatomical information, let your hands take you on this poetic journey on a body, etc. So there was that, and I wanted to have as little text as possible and leave as much space for people's notes, because it was going to be a workbook and not a book for people to read. And then, since I had defined that modules 2 and 3 could be taken in either order, one of the first organizers for this basic training in Austria said, well, then for my folks, I would like part 3, the organ function, before the depths. You know, the depths are nice, but if people have the safety energy locks and their flows, and then the organ functions and their flows, they have the basic tools. And I thought, well, if we're doing organ functions, here I feel I need to comment a bit, because organ function energy, in my perception, always gets treated as this, you know, that's body repair. But Mary is very, very clear in her textbook too, that that's about exactly 1/12 of what organ function energy does. Yes, it does repair the body. It repairs, builds, and protects, she says, the body as well as the invisible voice, consciousness, and energy. So it builds voice, it builds consciousness, it builds body, it builds energy or vitality, but it also, so we have 12 aspects to each of the 12 organ function energies. I actually wrote an article years ago, maybe 20 years ago, for the Main Central, entitled 144 Questions on Text 2, that goes into that. So I wanted to make a point of who organ function energy is for me. Mary calls it bodybuilding energy in Text 2. There are a few, if you want to go to your textbooks of Mary's, look at pages 3 and 9 in Text 2. And you'll find those sentences about build, protect, and repair, and about body, consciousness, voice, and energy, and feel into that and muse on that. So who is organ function energy? And I started writing text, and that was really liberating. Because as much as I, love Mary's words, the way they challenge us, it's like, who writes like this? Anybody remember getting your hands on Self-Help Book 1? I was 20, once again. And I read this, Philomena gave me my first self-help book, And I read this in 40 minutes, cover to cover, and I thought, doesn't this woman know how to write, or is she doing this on purpose? Well, it took me some time to realize just how much she's doing it on purpose, to the point that exactly 36 times in Self-Help Book 1, not 35, not 37, exactly 36 times, you will find the expression, it's simply getting to know, help, myself. Know myself, capital letters. Help, with a capital H in parentheses. She's really rubbing it in. Know myself, that's the big help. Know myself, that's the big help. Know myself, that's the big help. And that was only 3 times, it's 36 times in the book. But she doesn't say it with words. She leaves it there for those who care to discover. So with loving the book so much, I soon started translating them, first into French, as I was sort of learning French, and then into German. I thought even more about the words, but to then, after all those years, write down many of the things that I've been saying for years in classes, and realize that, quite different from Mary, I found myself writing texts that are very, very dense. They are very dense texts, and they bear being read and reread, I think over the course of the years, because they're really condensed, perspectives. And so that's what ended up being in book 3, and that's when I decided, okay, this book is also, yes, yes. These 3 books now exist in German. We have, yes.
So it's not even for you guys, okay?
Yet. But with book 3, what happened is I realized,
practice soon, though,
because, So I realized that what I'd written, the 8 very, very dense pages of text I'd written, as well as the very different descriptions of the flow patterns that don't describe energy circulating through a body that already exists, but energy building a body. I thought this is also, besides being a workbook for a class, an interesting study object for people who already have a background. So the English versions of book, and then when I wrote about the depths, even more text happened. And so those will be out in English sometime this year.
Okay. So, okay, I think we should get to practice there, and right? But Matthias can talk forever. Me, I'm very right. I appreciate this very much.
Yes.
So again, on Sunday we're going to be here together and presenting some of the self-help material, and we'll have fun with that. So please join us.
And one thing I will take advantage of saying, I've been doing for 7 months now an online study circle, a monthly thing in German, which by the spring at the latest I plan to also be offering in English.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Yeah.
A monthly
and maybe
membership.
we can do something together, Matthias. We can continue working together. That would be great. Okay, so we're just going to see how Matthias goes about a body on the body with that.
And one thing I'll comment on before I start, keying into, you said Matthias can talk for hours, and I can, and anybody who knows that. I'll just remind you of what I said before about this, about the 13 is the place to come from, the way I talk, and the fact that I talk much. And again, this is not for everybody, but it has to do with the fact that I know that the words that I use sing to that 13 place in people. Words can often address that 14 place, that mind place in people, and convey information. And, well, all right, so.
Jules, do you know Jules, by the way? She's my partner here. She's been in Jyutsu forever, too, since she was a teenager. And we do usually do the practice circles together.
Hi,
Do you know each
Jules.
other? You met
A
right?
long time ago, I took a few classes with you here in New York.
Okay, you guys can come around and join in and interact.
So,
Is there any comments?
You do.
I will again
I can't
remind you
see them with one more. You need this though. I think you do.
of 13, because I really don't have much more than that to say. When you look at a body, make sure that you don't let that be the moment when you switch to your mind. or you're lost, and so is the person on the table. So as I look for the strength that I see embodied in the person, I need to let my gaze wander. I need to let my gaze sort of, I feel tempted to say graze or go to pasture, in a sense. Language is something really beautiful. Different languages have different expressions that convey different things. In French, and arguably the French culture is an extremely visual one, they use the word poser, which means to put down, when they talk about the gaze. Poser le regard. Poser le regard in French means, well, literally translated, it means to put down your gaze or to let your gaze rest in a place. So look at a person on a table, any person on a table, and see where your gaze likes to rest. In other words, find that difference between an alarmed, oh, I don't think these feet are how they should be. That's the, what can I find wrong with this? Where am I called upon to intervene and correct? But look at, where do I find an easeful and easy resonance? Where, if I look at that person's body and let my gaze respectfully rest there, do I feel that, oh, this is a good place to stay. This is a good place to be for a while. What's the general expression? Like, you look at a work of art. Well, I don't know how you look at a work of art. So many, art is for everybody. And yet, a majority of people stay away from fine arts because they think they shouldn't go to a museum because they're going to make a fool of themselves. They shouldn't look at go to a gallery because they wouldn't know what one is supposed to see in these paintings. And we don't want to be stupid, but that's not how we look at art or life. It's like, what is the resonance? You need to give yourself time. If you're a practitioner who wants to work with a person in that way, you need to give yourself that time. And with a little practice, it won't be 10 or 20 minutes. But believe me, the person, if we as a group manage to have that gaze, the person on the table is already beginning to change from being looked at in a way that does not seek the fault or the default or the lack. So, when looking for a person's strength, of course, I'm not looking for some idea of what strength means. I am looking for what this person's place to retreat to, if need be, would be. So strength can be a relative strength under the circumstances that were mine then. The best I knew how to do was to create this moat here, or this wall there. Oh no, let's not use that word. That barbed wire, or that protection, or that capsule, or whatever it is. So I'm not talking about what would look good in a magazine. I'm talking about what touches me. What about the humanness of the person on the table touches me? What about, sometimes there is a very proper togetherness that a person has, and something about that is touching if I'm present and don't come from a place of having an idea about whether a person should be that way or some other way. So what about it is touching? If you want to find the place in the body that's inhabited, one of the things you might look at, besides simply trusting your own resonance in your own body, if I look at the way her breath flows in the whole belly area, that soothes me. Just looking at it would be a very, very good way for you to find that place of strength. And sometimes until you find that place of, oh, it's really soothing to me to look at that body there, you can look at the breath. Where is the breath? It is safe to say that where the breath comfortably inhabits the body, the person comfortably inhabits the body, and that's where the breath is going. And yet, you also don't just look at measurable breath volume. See, the thing that's your strength here is you've been living in a human body too, and for a while. So you know what it feels like to breathe like this, like, do I really have to do this breathing thing? And you also know what it feels like to breathe like this. So when you see an efforting breath, you know it because you've had it. When you see a breath that's held back, you know it because you recognize it, because you've been there. When you see breath that is flowing amply, you know it because you've had those moments. And the beauty is, it doesn't matter how often you are in the ample and released breath, you have been there and you know it. And it doesn't matter whether you've ever even nearly been there to the extent that the client on the table is there, or vice versa. Because the basic factor of recognition of, it's not because it's moving that means harmony already. How is it moving? And the expertise to find out how is this moving does not come from a book, it doesn't come from theory, it does not come from what I am going to tell you. It comes from you having been a breather for some time and therefore knowing. Okay? So. So have you noticed a change in her breathing since she's been on the table and I've seemed to have been doing nothing but talk? Have you? Do you?
Yes.
So what's the change you're noticing?
It's more relaxed and it's fuller, I think.
Where is it fuller?
In this area. I
In
think.
that area?
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you've seen shift? The reason I am asking these questions is never to test anyone. There is no right or wrong answer here. But the reason I keep asking questions is to keep encouraging you out of the perspective of, I'll listen to what he says and then I'll see it, and into that obvious self-empowerment that you need of, it's there, I'm seeing it. So the chest area rose and fell with breath after a while in a way it had not before. And at times it did so with a sort of fresh, brave courage. Oh, yes, okay, I guess I can move with the breath too. And then little by little it melted into a more wavy kind of a breath. So there's ease happening. How is ease happening? When you have a group of people watching you. If the bubble that's being held, if the safe space that's being held is genuine, then that happens. You know, and some spectators may say, oh, come on, you know, she's been relaxing on the table for 10 minutes, don't make a big thing out of that. I'll let you live your own experience of that. So grab a chair.
If you want to grab a chair, people also can, right?
Once I have found the area that interests me, and you know, I said earlier that I find soothing. That's the first time I used that expression. By the way, when I talk, it's the same in teaching or in doing this, I don't have a plan. I don't have a set vocabulary. I mean, certain things, of course, I do repeat, but I always like how in the situation certain words come, and I find myself surprised at the words I'm using. I find myself surprised at where my hands go. That's what it means to be a cable and an artist, and it doesn't have anything to do with doing any old thing. It's not arbitrary. It's not arbitrary. The words I use are the words that are wanting to be used. Where my hands go is where my hands are wanting to go. So once I have found a place that draws me to it, or in today's vocabulary that I find soothing just to let my gaze rest in, I generally want to find out more. And I want to find out more, it means I go there with my hands and I say, tell me about yourself. I always allow for the possibility that what I saw, and by consequence thought, may have been mistaken. The reason that matters to me is if it's important to me that I'm right. I know this stuff, I've been doing this for over 36 years. When it starts important to me to be right, then I'm really more often wrong than not. I get stuck. And then it becomes a power play. I'm right, so your body must now confirm to me what I think I've seen. So this is where it's really, really interesting to let my hands be curious and let them be novices and let them directly take the imprint that my eyes also took. My eyes took theirs, my hands will take theirs. So So here is, so how does the body then respond? Here, right now, is a body that immediately takes that space. Takes that space in my hands, and my hands are doughy. You know, they are like gentle, soft dough. They're also full of life and full of sensitivity. They're not passive, but they have that soft, adaptable, malleable quality to them that a body can breathe into. They will expand with the body and be shaped by the body's movement. And so I feel that the body front and back in the 14 area and the 23 area is taking the space that I'm offering. So my hands go there with, and that I mean what I'm saying, my hands go there with an approach of, I've seen you, tell me more. It's not my mind that sends my hands and say, okay guys, find out more information. I hope you get the difference. You will through practice. It's my mind likes to be the observer. That's my mind finds this very exciting and is quite happy to stay the observer, the storyteller afterwards. But the hands are picking up on, yes indeed, this area seems to say, you got me right, this is where I do know to take space. And as soon as my hands, the way I place them here, mirror that, you see what happens. Now with this last inhale, the expansion went up to the shoulders on both sides. The ribs, which were moving before, the rib cage is taking a more easeful expansion, and we haven't even done a proper flow yet, and I may not do until we're done. Which doesn't mean, you know, during my demos, sometimes this idea comes up, oh, Matthias doesn't use flows anymore. He does. You know, in my practice, I often use flows, but what I'm demonstrating here goes into the way I use the flows. It's a conversation with the body. So now I am feeling in the back on the left 23 area, and it is absolutely useless to write down where this is happening. The only thing that is useful is if you want to listen to why I'm talking about what I'm talking about. I'm feeling in an area, it happens to be the left 23, that there is a tightness that has about the firmness of soft rubber, you know, like the kind that insulates car doors, that kind of rubbery. And as the breath pushes that gently more into my hand, that's what I feel. And it catches my attention. If I'm present, it catches my attention. And what do? I meet what the body brings to me with the same firmness, -3%. Now this to me is crucial. The -3% piece, of course you can't measure that. It's something I made up or came up with. But the minus a tad, minus an inkling, makes sure that A, I am not meeting firmness with an inappropriate kind of, you know, mind-controlled gentleness that, I mean, I need to meet it with something similar to its own tone or there will be no conversation. You know, somebody comes to you and they're really uptight and you say, oh, you know, life is beautiful and everything's rosy. There's no conversation happening and they don't feel taken seriously. The body tissue is similar. However, if somebody comes to you with a certain level of agitation and you counter that with that same agitation or firmness plus 5%, then you're taking power. And depending on who the person on the table is, they may accept that power. You know, for me, that's something to constantly watch. I have this reputation of being this senior Jin Shin Jyutsu dude, you know, with many years of experience. So people would easily fall for that game if I played it. But I want the person, whether their mind knows it or not, I want the body to know that the process that's happening here is under their guidance, it's under their direction. So I'm very, very closely following the quality and density and firmness of the tissue, and I'm being a tad lighter than the tissue I'm touching. As the tissue softens, so will my touch. As the tissue hardens, so will my touch. As the tissue melts and I find a hard kernel of tension, my touch might firm up, but never to me. And there are different approaches and different tastes, and that's perfectly okay. But to me, it never goes to the level of, I found you, I know how to fix you. Simply because I think that any tension that a being has inscribed in their body is there for a reason. It was, under some past circumstance, the best this being knew how to do, and it helped their survival in a sense. So for me to respect that is crucial, because in my observation, if I push away the tension, very often the muscular tension will go away, but the energetic tension will just shift to a place where it's less easily unseated. So in other words, a person's need for defense will just go deeper if I violently push it out of there, because I think I know something. So you saw this reaction, remind me of your name?
Linda.
Linda. You saw this reaction that Linda started holding her neck, and then Madeline went and held her skull. So there is something that's pulling at the back of the body, on the back side. Yes, and we can go into, that's energy flowing up the back, and we can think, is this bladder function, is this kidney function, and that's just the road I don't travel anymore. And it's a luxury because I know that those functions go there, and therefore have freedom to choose not to go that route of, is there anything wrong with her bladder function energy or with her kidney function energy? Instead, I know that something along the back is adjusting. And you see, even just mentioning that, there's something that just happened with an inhalation now, and a sort of pulling and a tensing up in the 23 that is communicating to me that even talking about the fact, even pronouncing those words is already creating tension and a desire to make something right, to right a wrong or something like that. So I need to go find out more about the back that I noticed was tensing up, for the neck to be pulling back like this. And I need to now go from the strength that I found here to other areas and see how it can expand to there. So if the center, or since the center, 1423 area, does know how to take space, how to expand into space, can I go to other parts of the back and the body and see whether that can be just as comfortable there? And so I moved up the back a bit. And if you're eager to know just what safety energy locks I moved to, of course I could tell you I never hide anything, but it would be leading you in the wrong direction. It would be pointing you in the wrong direction. If I have anything to say that specifically pertains to the being that a safety energy lock is, that pertains to the number and its meaning, its vibratory essence, I will say that. But here what I'm doing is I am moving up from a center that's easeful and comfortable to a back that can learn from that. And that's what the focus is on. And yes, I could go into who 9 is and who 10 is and all of that, but that's just not to the point right now. Instead, if you, who have been inhabiting a human body, as I said, for some time, feel into your shoulder blade area, the whole bit, what's between your shoulder blades? And do you know these situations where you tighten there? Where even slightly and subtly you accept to live with a narrower landscape between your shoulder blades than feels good to the core of your being, then you know what the work's about. That these shoulder blades are sliding out. They're sliding out now. They're taking up more space. So now I'm moving to that, and I will tell you the number of the safety energy lock to the 26 area. See, now I'm mentioning that it is 26 because now that I've moved from the center of the back all the way out to the outside of the shoulder blade, to the wing area, the base of the wing, at this point, I see it making sense to mention the energy lock itself. 26 meaning complete. But again, feel into that in your own body, in your own life. As a practitioner, this is what you will want to have at your disposal. You will want to know what it feels like to be wide here and to spread your wings. Doesn't mean you have to be that at the moment you're doing a session, but you have to know that that's what lives in a human body, in yours and others. Good. Now I am going to the center of the chest area, center 13, and taking it from there. See what's happening there? Okay, so what do you see?
Big inhale. Yeah, big inhale. Just, yeah.
Where do you see it going? What was this?
It's moving down the front. I think. Yeah.
What? If you just specifically, if you forget for a moment that you know anything at all about Jin Shin Jyutsu, down the front and up the back, if you truly, I mean, it's wonderful to know things about Jin Shin Jyutsu, and it's great to come from a place of forgetting that for a moment and just looking at what within the reality of life, what did this look like to me? What event was this? Not how can this be interpreted, but simply what did I directly see before the interpretation comes in. Jules, you were going to say something about what it looked like to you. Yeah?
Thank you.
Is this too heavy?
I saw the ribs expanding and the lungs expanding. I didn't really see it going down so
Right.
much, but I wouldn't say that that's it. You know, in Jin Shin Jyutsu we learn that we should inhale, like, and fill up our abdomen and all that. But I saw what I was thinking was that earlier she was inhaling to her abdomen, but not
Now, did you observe Jules as well as listening to her? And the direction I would encourage all of you to go in is when you said, I saw the chest expanding, you didn't just say those words, but this is what I call the poetic dimension of life. When the sensuous, this is what I love about being alive part is present to the, it's very different whether you say, I saw the chest expanding, or whether you say, and I saw the chest expanding. So, you see that it to me, it had something of at last,
Mm-hmm.
And again, with words, if this were a session, a private session I was doing, I would be very sparing with words. I probably wouldn't be talking about it. I might mirror it sometimes. More often I would ask, if anything, but I would always take it in. I would always take it in, and the 13ness of what I'm perceiving would be my guiding star. In other words, license is being taken. That's what I felt when I saw that expansion in the chest. And that's what I felt when I saw you echo it in your words and your physicality, because your ribcage did something different from hers, when yet akin. So you and this is the deep connection from her humanness to yours and your humanness to hers that's happening, and that's why that art is called the art of creator, as Mary translates Shin, through aware and understanding, compassionate human being. That's who you're being when from the sensation of your own aliveness you relate to the sensation of her aliveness or anyone's. And then your life story and hers can be as diverse and different as any two life stories can be, and you're intimately connected as though you were twin sisters. That's where the Lord goes. So as we're saying this, and Linda is laughing, with that laugh, a remnant of tension on both tens released. A remnant of tension, something just went poof. And again, this is what I pay great attention to. When the body releases the tension by just going, like somebody dropped a fine linen handkerchief. And not but something's no longer needed, that sort of by the way quality. Because you see, when we work with this area, which is also an emotional center, we could get in touch with all kinds of stories that are connected to this. Instead of just, taking license, we could get into the how difficult it is sometimes, and then we get into that. That's mind stuff. That's mind stuff. That's no longer body stuff, and that's no longer feeling stuff. And the 10, that area, the 10 is a curious area. Would you come over here for a second? The 10, which, in Jyutsu we have learned is called the warehouse of abundance, the vehicle of the outpouring of limitless life power. But where is 10? 10 is in the back here, between the middle of your shoulder blade, right behind your heart and lungs, right? So this is the place where abundant energy from universal supply comes into you and through you. This is where that voice of generations standing behind you, of all that led you to this moment, all that's gone before this moment sort of stands behind you. That's the abundance we're talking about, and says, "This is my beloved child, in whom I am well pleased." That's a biblical phrase. Of course, it says "son" in the Bible, and it doesn't mean what faith, if any, you identify with. It's just that sentence that we all need to resonate with. That something, doesn't have to be someone, your ancestors and universe, all the way to universal source. That which has lived, that has brought you to this moment, everything, the whole past, everything. That sense that, wow, I can lean into, would you lean into my hand, please? Yes. So you're not giving up your access, just lean into it and mean it. Don't try to measure anything. Just, you're not giving up your axis, and yet, if I suddenly removed my hand, you wouldn't fall over. You'd shake a bit like a bamboo in the wind, and you'd stand. But as you lean into the support, and you feel that something's got your back, as you say in American English, something's got your back, something's backing you up, something's saying, come this far, you've made it to this, wow, you're living life this way, this is my beloved child in whom I am well pleased. That is such an important voice to hear. Use different words if that works, but this idea of this ample, let's try something else for a moment. I want to get to this area, and Alexis is already there, but let me gently hold the 15 area, because if you were observing, the hands were like a sort of safeguard, we'll be the last to go, we'll be the last to give type of thing. So the top was expanding and taking license, and then the question, dare I really occupy this much space? Doesn't a narrowness or a tightness or a pull have to come back somewhere? That message came out of the woodwork. Right? And I don't make it big. I'm not interested in telling anybody a story about themselves. I'm interested in hearing a story I can then forget. Hearing, figuratively speaking. So in the course of the session, I see space being taken, license being taken, then I come to the place that seems to hold on most, or that could be the next to also enjoy that expansion. And I keep going back to this touch that is very earthy and very global, and that communicates space, that offers space. Not a touch that says, you should widen here, let me massage you, rub you, knead you into being softer and wider here, but a hand that knows what that might feel like and offers that kind of equality. And then the body will or not, echo that. And if it does, that's fine, and if it does not, that's also fine. I'm not invested. The reason, Madeline, I asked you to, I said let's try something else, is that the need had manifested once before at the neck, and it did again. And I thought, let's just see whether that's something we want to, it felt like we might be
feeding the story if we went to that mood again?
Because when, you know, when we were first examining Linda on the table, the place where I saw harmony was like, oh, she's got such a lovely face, she's got a lovely smile. And so my first impulse was to go to the fours.
Right.
Because there was this ease, this openness in the face. To support that.
Yeah.
So when she went to the fours, I was, oh, that's where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
So that's where I was.
Yeah. And that helped immediately, and then something came back in terms of attention. Now the face is quite contented, and also the neck looks long. Linda, is that, yeah. Were you ready to say something? So, how are we doing for time, by the way?
I'm just going to start with her.
Okay.
She's going back to college. And we go to 12.
Okay.
And so usually we practice on each other.
Okay.
So people have a chance to get the session. And
Sure. So, and this is why I said we might go over the 20 minutes. If I want to round off the work that's happening, I would, one can always go longer, one can always go shorter, but whatever we do, to decide that when it feels round, when it feels like it's taken a journey, when it feels like it's complete for now, that's when I would end the session. So, as it settles into the pelvic area, and that, again, if you look at what difference you might see now in the body, is there anything that you notice?
Carrie?
Maybe a little widening.
Yeah. So there is more that we could talk about along these lines. Like my left hand is now under the coccyx and sacrum area with fingers pointing down. That's not something I can explain from a book or tell you to also do that way. This is just what, in working with this body now, came up and makes sense. And the coccyx sacrum area felt a little curled under like this when I touched it, so it confirmed that sensation of this would be the last to give up the watch, and that watchfulness that was visible in the body before, but was not the starting point for me. That watchfulness had every reason to be whenever it was created, and when that is given up for the time of the session, then that is something for me to know, to take notice of, and to accompany until I feel that now it's time to let the system take care of itself and let the person go into their own space. So that's plenty, I think, for the person and the being to digest. And I would love to hear from you if there's anything you would care to share with us about the session.
Well, I feel like I should.
Only because I do want to share, because I know there are other people who are watching. But it's like my whole body, I don't know if you can see I'm trembling. My whole body's trembling, and it really was from the beginning. Well, whenever I'm near Alexis, because I have a pulmonary issue, and even Jules, my lungs just automatically start draining. So I always feel that sensation, and I also get tingling in my hands and feet. So I already had that going, But then with your energy, it was almost overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking, it was just like, just way too, it was too much. And I have a problem with motion sometimes and motion sickness. And I just felt like my whole body was, I almost was going into shock, if you will, where I could throw up or faint. Because I just felt so much going on. I just really couldn't explain it because I've never had this sensation before.
Right.
And that's why I put my hands on my floors, because I just was feeling like I just needed to do that. It's just so powerful, the amount of energy I felt. It was like, it was like cathartic, but like I was fearful. It was like too much. Like, oh my God, what's happening to my body?
Well, what was happening to your body?
What do you mean?
Well, you said, oh my God, what's happening to her? I'm
like I
interested
just-
in the too much. I'm interested
It just
in
felt systemic. It's like, wasn't
Right.
concentrated. It was like my limbs, it was my whole being. I was overwhelmed and crying, and it was just so much emotion and so much feeling.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever felt that before.
Right. The reason I'm asking about the too much, Linda, is did you feel, or can you feel now, things in your body and places in your body that are having a hard time coming back to this moment and settling?
My hands are still trembling.
Okay.
In my feet, because, just I'm feeling better now that I shared that. I didn't really want to talk,
Right.
but now I feel better.
Well, because it's important to know whether the too much is a comment from our mind that would rather keep things the way they've always been and feel familiar, or whether in the body we find that, no, this was really too much. And that's why I'm asking about that. So the trembling that you probably felt a lot more trembling inside than we saw from the
My
outside.
lips were like going crazy.
And I would be really
It's so
interested
weird.
now
It's crazy.
if you would sit up
I'm
and
afraid to sit
pause. That's another comment. When you sit, pause, and as you're sitting there, just feel what your torso feels like as you're sitting up. Is there any difference in the way the body space feels?
I'll try to sit up.
With your
Put your
legs
feet
to
down.
the side, and just so those who've been watching, okay. See, when I ask a person to get up from the table and sit there first, I always watch what their body does, what their face does, and invite them to feel
I do feel dizzy,
dizzy.
and I
What else
feel
is
like
there? The
I
body
need
spaces,
Alexis
the
right now
body
to put her
spaces.
hands right here.
The body spaces, Linda.
The body.
What? Yes. What do you feel in your body?
I feel a little nauseous.
In your body. How do the
I'm-
shoulders feel? How does the
My whole
rib
body
cage
just
feel?
feels very, it feels relaxed,
Right.
very relaxed, like it's sort of not my body,
Right.
like just kind of hanging off of my head.
That's why I'm insisting. So the comment is, I'm nauseous, I'm this, I'm that, I need Alexis, so that there's a lot of commentary going on that wants to avoid the one thing, to say, I feel really relaxed, it's almost not my body. And you're right, it isn't. In the sense, in the body scheme that you've been identified with. So this is an interesting thing to deal with or play with or work with. In looking, I'll tell you what I see, and I invite you to join in, but I see a different expansion in the chest area that's holding up, and that's quite visible. It's quite visible from before.
I feel like my posture's really poor.
Exactly. And congratulations on that for the moment. Now when you stand up, yes, you see, because when I have, for reasons of mine, that I need to justify to no one, when I have counted on holding it together while knowing one place that remembers softness, but when control has been my issue, and then I can afford to do this, that does feel scary and scarily unfamiliar to one part of me, And the passage through a really lousy posture is just the passage through not needing the compensation quite so much anymore, or the control quite so much anymore. So again, this is why I said earlier, so if you imagine that my body now allows me this, and it also allows me this, I imagine my life would from here on allow me more presence of this kind and more ease in this way. If I translate this body sensation into a way of feeling about life, oops, there might be reasons why one wants to go back rather quickly to something more familiar, which is okay if that happens, but the body, this I trust, or the being through the body takes that information that something else is possible, even if the mind does the best it can to protest that and say, no, no, no. Now would you stand on your feet and see how that works? And we watch. Yeah. The moment the person lands on their feet, the moment Linda landed on her feet, did you see where the movement went? Some people, when they land on their feet after a session, you see everything going, you feel like, they're melting into the ground. It's very different. So what did it look like to you? What did it feel like to you, Linda? And then I'll ask what it looked like to you.
I mean, I felt the connection with the ground, but
yes.
Everything else still feels kind of buzzy.
Yeah.
Still, yeah.
How did she look to you in standing up? What's the first movement that happened when she hit the ground?
There was a real, she pulled herself up, it was sort of, maybe it was going back to, an attitude, a physical attitude that is more familiar.
Yeah.
I saw this kind of adjustment to rising to her own height, sort of.
Well, the very first thing that I saw, and again, we may all be mistaken, and yet we must, with that softness of realizing that there may be other ways of seeing it, we must also take seriously what our perception in the moment is. And my perception in the moment was that there was a wave up that went through, and whether afterwards there was a holding on to a posture, it was she stood taller, it seemed like to me, and in a freer way.
From your mouth.
But I don't matter in this, Linda. If you'd
Everyone
rather
matters,
not,
I think.
no, if you'd rather not have this be true, it's your life, it's your body, it's okay.
No, I want it to be true.
Yeah, it's okay. But the place that I encourage you to consult to find out whether it is true and your truth and your effective truth is the body. Find, does the body need to recoil, or does the body enjoy the expansion? Does the body need to sit down, or is it some other instance that says, I don't want to surrender my neediness so quickly, or something like that, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's because we're complex beings, all of us, and yes, we want assistance, and we deserve assistance, and all of that, and we deserve sovereignty, and we want sovereignty. So these places will play, and that. So there's an inhale and a test here of how much space there is there, and whether in the long run the being will want to record this newfound space and this newfound autonomy remains to be seen. That's so.
Well, thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Very interesting. We're very grateful.
Thank you.
To have you here and just present this. Wonderful. For me too. Yeah. And thank you. And we'll be together on Sunday then. Yes. Help and have more fun. Thanks, and Carrie. Usually I don't.
Yeah, thank you. Everybody who's watching on Facebook, wonderful. Let's get in the light. Let's get in the light together, Matthias. We still have space, both in person on Sunday and by webinar. It's all on the website, and I will post a link. I'll edit the copy above this video, and I'll post a link to sign up. So, thank you. That was wonderful.
Pleasure.
Yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have any questions or comments, I'm sure we have a ton of them actually. Please drop them below, and we will get to them. All right. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Good.
We'll end it now. All right.
Carrie, you wanna? So Carrie